This is a More Than Just Podcast production.
Welcome to Podcast Season 7, Episode 1. I was going to say, which episode is this? Yeah. Season 7, Episode 1. My name is Tim. I am in Toronto, Ontario. I am joined by Jonathan Kuline in Mississauga, Ontario.
Hello there, kids.
And we also have Jaime Lopez Jr. on the line in Seattle, Washington.
How's it going?
Alrighty. Now, before we get into the fact check, I don't know if you caught it on the Slack there, Jonathan. I interviewed somebody that's going to be on the next episode of More Than Just Code, and I went back through the episodes where we name dropped him, and because all three of us at least, name drop that guy all the time. But I found one episode where Jaime did not say in the correct tone and enunciation, "How's it going?"
Yes, there's that one time that Jaime didn't land his catchphrase.
There you go. Yeah. It's like the smiling Spock kind of thing, right?
Yeah,
that was evil alternate Jaime.
It'll go on the Cliff Notes version. Alrighty, so I'll bet also in the fact check follow up, whatever we call it on this show, Balmoral Castle, which I talked about on The Crown, is in Scotland. That's where they go to. That's their sort of cottage, their summer cottage, I guess, when the royal family goes up to Scotland, and they have this ritual where one of them, the eldest males, have to go and shoot a big buckhorn deer or whatever. Yeah, so it's just something, and it was something about Will not wanting to do it or not doing it or whatever. I can't remember what it was, but anyway. And we were talking about Keeley Hawes from Orphan Black and the Life on Mars show that I watched. Jonathan said, mistook her as Keeley from Ted Lasso. Keeley Jones is the character on Ted Lasso, played by Juno Temple.
But if you read the note underneath, actually, I mixed her up with another Keeley H.
Oh.
Keeley Hazel plays Bex, who's the wife of Rebecca's ex Rupert on the show. That's why I got them mixed. Is it's Keeley Hazel.
Oh, okay. So yeah, so it wasn't. I mixed up the Keeley you were mixing her up with, and you corrected it.
Yes.
That's why we have fact check.
Yes, we fact check the fact check. That's how rigorous we are here on Spotcast.
Yeah, how many do you want to weigh in on this at all?
With the oops, all Keeleys. I didn't realize there were that many.
Alrighty, let's move on to the headlines, and Jonathan's up first.
Yeah, I thought I would start us off on a downer, but not a terrible one. Great life lived. So James Darren passed away this week. He was a Canadian actor.
Canadian, really?
Yeah, I think it says in here he's Canadian. Oh, maybe I'm wrong. Oh, no, maybe he's not. I might be wrong. Anyways. Strike that. James Darren died this week. He was 88 years old. For our fans, probably best known for his role on Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Jaime?
I'm pulling out. I'm drawing a complete blank on DS9.
Mm-hmm.
On the holodeck.
Oh, okay. Now that I see a better picture, I'm like, Vic, right?
He was Vic, the lounge singer on the holodeck for Deep Space Nine fans. Yeah. He was also really well known for, he had a recurring role on Beverly Hills 90210. He was on Melrose Place. He had been an actor since like the 1960s, very famous. He was in like the TV show Gidget in the 1960s, which was very popular, I'm told. And yeah, so he had a very, very long career as a young man right through to his older years. Yeah. So,
was that Sally Fields in Gidget?
That's a good question. I
feel like it is.
Your mother, when I mentioned that he died, your mother went, "Oh, from Gidget."
Yeah.
No, maybe Gidget was Carrie Fisher's mom.
Yeah. Debbie Reynolds.
No, she was Tammy. She was Tammy, though.
I love this game. We're down the rabbit hole of 1960s people.
Oh, wait. No, I did find a new game. It's called the movie game. I'll explain it to you later. Maybe we'll do it in the after show.
Sandra D was Gidget.
In the movies.
I don't know. It says in the movies, yeah. On the TV show?
TV show.
Oh, boy. Here we go.
Sally Fields. I win.
Sally Field. There you go. I thought she was the Flying Nun.
She was also the Flying Nun, and she was also the love interest in Smokey and the Bandit.
Oh, see, that I remember.
And she's also Forrest Gump's mom.
That I also remember.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well,
all
that to say, James Darren is dead, and thanks for all the memories. Again, I always thought it was a bit of a weird. He was sort of the confidant, but also a holodeck character. It was kind of a weird thing that they did. I don't know, Jaime. I know you were another DS9 head. Did you have strong feelings about the Vic character?
I thought the character was interesting. But ignoring the character themselves, I felt like towards the latter handful of episodes, I felt like there was a weird tonal shift of dude, you're in the middle of the Dominion War. Maybe not solve this problem. Feels like this episode should have happened earlier in the season. So ignoring that's like a writer's. Why did you put this one in here? It doesn't fit with the flow of the story arc, but the independent episode itself is fun and definitely would have made sense earlier in the season or maybe in a prior season. So that's my take on the character. I thought the character is interesting, especially his interaction with Nog as Nog is recovering from a war wound and stuff like that. I thought was pretty cool. It felt like, not that I knew it then, but knowing now, I'm like, kind of feels like a Chat GPT thing in the future of I need this person, quote unquote person, to talk to that isn't as intimidating because you perceive it as not a person.
Yeah.
Even though you can talk to it like a real person.
So like Siri?
Yeah.
Just like Siri.
Just like Siri. All right. Next up, just recapping a little bit of the news since we were off, I wanted us to be able to discuss the cancellation of The Acolyte, something that we talked about in our last season. So One and Done, The Acolyte has been canceled by Disney. And I wish I could say I'm surprised. I kind of thought they might do a second season just out of spite because there was all the review bombing and everything. But it was a bit inconsistent. It was not obviously the strongest Star Wars thing. I think there was some really cool stuff in there, but I don't know that it was the best thing I've ever seen. I think it's just disappointing that they couldn't for once give a series a clean ending. It's just frustrating. They had to know that the metrics were showing poorly. Maybe just cut the scene with Darth Sidious or Darth Plagueis rather. Cut some of the stuff out that's foreshadowing the next thing. You don't need it. Cut out the Yoda scene at the end. Wrap it up.
Yeah.
Are you guys happy, sad, disappointed? Were you surprised?
I'm disappointed, but I think I like Dave Price's contribution on our Slack where he posted the picture of Emperor Palpatine. What's he called when he's not Emperor Palpatine? Senator Palpatine, I guess.
Well, he was Chancellor Palpatine, and then
Chancellor Palpatine talking to Anakin Skywalker.
Yeah.
So, did you hear the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise? And Anakin replies, "No, they canceled the Acolyte."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. How about you, Jaime?
Yeah, I'm not surprised. It makes sense. I agree with your take that they don't need to hard tease on these things, and if you realize, hey, we're not going to do another season, don't even do the tease.
Yeah,
I don't think they did though. They put that out. I think they put that in there so that there would be a.
Well, but
a Hail Mary pass.
Yeah, what were they expecting people to be like? Oh, season 2 is going to have Yoda and Darth Sidious. It had been so mercilessly flamed, and I guess that's my disappointment in it is it got so mercilessly flamed by trolls who were like, oh, there's too many people of color. Oh, there's too many queer characters. Oh, and it's just okay, screw those people, first of all. But I guess there was enough either vitriol or poor performance that it wasn't worth it for Disney to do it again or, take any more bad publicity hits. It's disappointing when the trolls win,
Yeah, I'm not the only person who thought this, but it's also sad because we're going to miss out on the continuing adventures of Darth Bortles, as people have dubbed him online. Not my name, but I'm sure. Other than The Stranger, I feel like Darth Bortles is good.
Yeah, it's funny. It kind of, I didn't put the 2 and 2 together until we got the return of Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power for season 2, which is what we're going to talk about later on. I didn't put two and two together that obviously the character in there is called the Stranger too. And I was like, oh yeah, what are the odds in like consecutive shows we have the Stranger as like a primary character?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Well, so rest in peace, the Acolyte. We hardly knew ye. I have seen a few things after the fact. Amanda Stenberg, who was the sort of played the twins, expressed her very sad feelings about this. Manny Jacinto said, like, it is now my goal in life to get a season 2. Maybe this is one of those like cancel it and people will advocate for it, but I just don't think it's that. I think we are now entering a realistic era of even Marvel and Star Wars shows can be canceled, which is like, I don't even know how to wrap my head around that. But on the good side, maybe Dark Matter has been renewed for season 2 by Apple TV Plus. We talked about Dark Matter. I really dug it. I thought it was really cool. They left the door open for a season 2 in a way in the finale, but you could have quite easily just left it as is.
Yeah, I think so. That's my feeling of it.
I'm open. Given how I thought it was really compelling, I thought there was, a lot of good stuff in there. I guess the question is, does season 2 go a different direction, or does it continue to follow some of the adjunct characters? That's the part I'm a little curious about. I really don't. I kind of like the ending that they gave to the main 3 characters.
Yeah,
like,
I mean, for me, the it's kind of like a logarithmic function, because every episode there were more of him,
Mm-hmm.
And so what are they going to do? Like have an entire society of him next season, right? So yeah, I think it would have been better if they just wrapped it up and just left it on as close, because it was probably only one book that it was based on, right? But they used to do this in the 70s and 80s. They would come up with a vehicle of some type, which is this box, right? And then they would just make it an episode. Every week would be a different adventure with the box, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's how they kind of used to do it back in the day. But Time Tunnel and Lost in Space and even Star Trek to a certain extent, right? They would have a scenario and they would just play with it every week, right? But yeah, I don't know. I the way that story went, it was kind of like, boy loses home, boy wants to get back to home, boy eventually gets home, or does he? And that's where we leave it, right? So
yeah.
I think they could have just left that one alone.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's good. We do know that Apple TV Plus is producing really high quality programs across the board, but really specifically sci-fi. They've kind of been on a little hot streak, so I'm game to give it another shot. I wonder if it's going to be a second season focused on like the Jimmy Simpson character who was, stranded on another world earlier, or the other character who decided to go off on her own earlier on. Yeah.
Probably Investor too.
Yeah. So they can kind of go other places. They don't have to bring back, the main 3 characters, but yeah.
But then it becomes The Walking Dead, right? You know what I'm saying?
That's the thing is like, I found myself, and we'll talk a little bit later about Time Bandits too, but I found myself thinking like, oh, are they going to like wrap this up in a bow just like the movie? Is it going to kind of land? And I was like, oh no, it doesn't. It kind of leaves the door open for a season 2. And I found myself again feeling a little bittersweet about it. And maybe I'm just, because again, we just got burned by the Acolyte. I'm like, hey, how about you just like finish it up, and then if there's a reason to do season 2, you make up the reason at the beginning of season 2, as opposed to just leaving us on hooks in case it doesn't come back.
Yeah, like the Acolyte.
Which
is going to be the thing we'll be saying for the next 2 years, you realize, right?
Yes.
We used to be, not that we can say like Solo, but
Or we'll just say, portals!
Yep.
What do you got for us, Jaime?
The trilogy, the trifecta, will soon be complete, soon being December 20th, 2024, as we record this very episode. That's right, folks. It's official. It's real. Sonic the Hedgehog 3, starring your own, Keanu Reeves as the third, beyond Ben Schwartz, beyond Idris Elba, beyond, Jim Carrey, James Marsden. Like, that's right. Keanu Reeves joins as Shadow the Hedgehog.
Yeah. About time.
This is 4 movies I need to watch now, right? Because I have not watched the first Sonic one. I haven't watched the Knuckles one.
Oh, that was a miniseries, but yes, you need to watch Sonic 1, Sonic 2, the miniseries of Knuckles, the Echidna, and then this.
But is there a Sonic the Master System version?
Or the Game Gear?
Yep. You want to go play them all, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like lock-on technology. Like, oh man, if you kind of like, Pink Floyd's The Wall and stuff, and it's like if you go and you line it up and you hit play on 2, it's like, holy smokes, I can't believe they added that in there. That adds so much flavor to the scene that happened 3 years ago.
Okay, so quick question. Jaime, where do you rank the Sonic movies as far as video game adaptations? We've had some good ones, we've had some bad ones. Are these on the higher end of the scale or the lower end of the scale?
My gut says higher end, but it is kind of a very lopsided sort of thing. And so if you wanted to grade on a curve, it's like, okay, well, you've got some ones like the Super Mario Brothers movie, the original one. Oof. It might be just called Super Mario Brothers with John Leguizamo and Bob Hoskins.
Yeah.
That one's like on the low end. And then on the high end is going to be the Super Mario Brothers movie animated one with Chris Pratt voicing and etc. Mm-hmm. The 1990s Mortal Kombat is pretty good. The newer one's kind of mid to Street Fighter. Street Fighter's a challenging. This is the one that like the archaeologists are going to really ponder and cause a schism in the alien future, where there will be those who say, there's good and then there's bad, and it's a line that's straight up and down. And some folks, they say, no, it is kind of linear, except it goes in a circle. So as you go so bad, you start looping back around to good.
That's right.
So that's kind of a wild card. You kind of keep that as like a special topic for you don't give that to the undergrads, you give that to the masters or perhaps the PhD folks.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So these are on the higher end. Like they're not. Look, it's still like very kid oriented. They do put really good, solid nostalgia. It's certainly worth talking about, telling the kiddos, sitting them down and having them to talk about old Sonic, which you can see in the Rescue Rangers movie. So it's a good discussion, but they're ultimately fun films. Are they great films? No. Are they like solid B+, B- films? I'm like, yeah, they're pretty solid. There's a reason that they're making a third one after the first one with old Sonic looked like it was going to be utter trash. And instead it's like, oh, wow, it's so beloved. They're making a third one, and they had enough time and effort and interest to make a Knuckles side story TV series. And they're still apparently willing to pay Jim Carrey, and they're paying more people. Idris Elba gets to come in again. It's like more than one-offs.
Yeah, fair.
At least they're taking it seriously, that means, right?
Weirdly, yeah. For a thing that's like a not very serious thing, here's a crazy scientist as the villain, and here's a blue hedgehog, and it's not all animated. It's live action. Yeah.
But it's like serious actors. I mean, like Jim Carrey's like not to be laughed at, and neither is Idris Elba, right? Or Keanu Reeves.
Yeah. So keep in mind Sonic the Hedgehog 3 as a sort of a preview for a different headline later in the show.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. What's next?
I'm not sure I understand why this is happening, but I am glad that it is happening. So the Ranma 1/2 anime series from way long ago, like late 80s, early 90s, the Rumiko Takahashi adaptation. They're doing a remake, I guess. It's not like a reboot. It seems like a retelling of the same story, but with not 1990s art, but modern, we got Netflix money kind of art.
Huh.
So I don't know how they're going to do this. There's a lot of seasons of Ranma, at least 7+ or so. I don't know if it's a time for nostalgia for folks. It is a very different world where I kind of wonder, the basic premise here is that there are various people who are martial artists. They train. Some of them end up at this like 1,000 spring cursed springs. Like, oh, this one, a young girl drowned, and her spirit haunts the spring. And this one, a panda drowned, and this one haunts the spring, and so on and so forth. The main character, Ranma, the sort of main shtick for the show is he's a teenage martial artist. His dad and his dad's best friend, who has a daughter named Akane. They've said, "Oh, you're betrothed. This is your fiance," right? The problem is that Ranma, the main character boy, is, cursed by that spirit. Where like when he gets, I can't remember if it's hot water or cold water. Pretend it's one and then it's the other, right? When he gets hit with cold water, he changes form into that girl form, and if he gets with warm hot water, he turns back to a boy. And the same thing with his father. His father is cursed to go from regular old dad to turns into a giant panda, and vice versa. So this was definitely of a different era. I am kind of wondering how the interwebs in this modern era will handle this sort of thing. There are in the modern era, it definitely takes on like a trans allegory kind of thing. But I think at the time it was more of like a gay or lesbian type allegory. So it's a very complicated world now. I don't know how this will land. Go watch some old 1990s sitcoms where they make gay jokes and be not so great nowadays. I can't believe this was on normal television before. And that is my concern. But otherwise, I'm pretty excited about the show because I have the nostalgia goggles for this one.
Yeah. And I think that's why it will at least get a look from a lot of people, because that was a pretty big anime property for, yeah, you're right, like a decade.
Yeah, it's even to this day, there's still people that go to like Comic-Cons and anime conventions and stuff as these characters, buy the manga reprints, buy the DVDs, buy the little plush toys and stuff. Yeah. So in that culture, it's definitely cool. I'm mildly concerned that putting it out in the Netflix culture will go well or not. So we'll see how they handle it. We'll see how it's approached.
Is it better that they're doing this as a remade anime than trying to do another live action? Because those seem to be a little inconsistent too, right?
Yeah, I think if you're going to do this, unless you're going to nail it like a One Piece, which is really hard, go see Cowboy Bebop or what do you call it? The Death Note for the other bad example. It's really tough to translate that sort of thing to live action. I think you're better off like go ahead and do more episodes and just continue on like the not Ranma, but another Rumiko Takahashi series, the Inuyasha continuation. Yep. Or maybe do a remake here. Like, there might be some newer fans that you might be able to get here, just like every other kind of remake that is out there. They might draw new fans. Like, hey, did you know the remakes? Like, what? This movie's a remake? Yeah, let's go watch that 1970s version. That sort of thing going with it.
Cool beans.
Yep. Speaking of ESPN.
So, I don't know if you all know this, but it is challenging in this modern era to watch the various shows that you'd like to watch. I mean, how many times have we brought up, long ago now, Tim's pick of the week at some point was justwatch.com. And that's really good and brilliant for movies and TV shows and documentaries and specials. The one thing it doesn't seem to do, though, is like, where am I supposed to watch these sports? And you might say, aha, you're so silly. Clearly it's on broadcast. Not always. Well, clearly it's on cable. Not always. Let me tell you about Peacock having this opening Friday NFL game that's exclusive on Peacock. Yep. It's like, I just want to watch my team. Where is it? It's like, well, ESPN has the Where to Watch service as the equivalent of JustWatch.com, but for sports streaming.
So how does it work?
I don't know how. I mean, I would guess that the data source, whether it's official or not, like you could probably just get an army of interns to like go scour the webs, like go through every go through the NFL, every team, every season kind of thing, figure out where it's at, go through the NHL, go through whatever, MLS and all the other things, and just mark it in a spreadsheet somewhere.
You just took me back to some of my terrible internships as a journalist. Sit here and compile this really tedious task.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know if they have. I mean, certainly given that ESPN has its own rights around a bunch of these, and I'm sure they can ask parent company Disney, hey, can you get ABC to play ball with us? Pun fully intended. But I also think you could just go scrape this off the internet or something.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how they're getting this to work, but it's like, yeah, it's achievable because there's really only a handful comparatively speaking, handful of professional sports teams anywhere in the world, right? You can get them all, single representative. You can get them all probably in the same stadium, I would guess. Not exactly the case for like, hey, here's like just Hollywood's output. Here's just Bollywood's output. Here's just Korea's output. Here's just, like you couldn't do that with other stuff. So I think this is probably an intern-powered solution here. That's what I would guess.
I sat the other night and rewatched for the first time in a while, Dodgeball, the great movie from I guess it was from the late 90s. And the parts with Gary Cole and Jason Bateman doing on ESPN 8, The Ocho, that just killed me. And as soon as I saw this thing, I was like, oh, good. Now I'll know what's on ESPN 8.
Yeah, The Ocho.
The Ocho. Oh, yeah. Good stuff. Good news for you, Tim. What do you got here?
Yeah, well, no, it's not good news. It's kind of been swept under the rug in that video game actors are still on strike or going on strike. The whole thing that we went through with the SAG-AFTRA stuff a couple of months ago that kind of put a whole bunch of shows on, questionable about whether they were returning and stuff like that, and we've been delayed getting back to that. But it turns out the video game actors are still on strike for very similar reasons. Jennifer Hale, who's voiced a ton of characters that you guys have probably heard 1,000 times before, is actually in the Guinness Book of World Records as the most prolific voice actress out there. She was on Day 6, which is a CBC show, talking about this strike and how even though the actors got the deal that they got with the AI clauses in there, right? The voice actors are concerned about that because now, they basically can build an actor's voice or reproduce an actor's voice in AI without the actor, right?
Yeah.
So this is a huge issue, and I just wanted to raise it here since we've talked about this in the show before in terms of, people actors. This is something I think that's gonna delay a lot of video game production, according to this particular piece that I was listening to on CBC, and just interesting that Canadian-born, Jennifer Hale was on there, and of course you may or may not know her. She was in Xcode in '97. She's been in Ralph Breaks the Internet. She has played a couple of big roles in the Star Wars video game franchises, right? So, if you look at her, she's Velma too. Wow, she's been in a lot of different things. But yeah, just interesting that we don't really talk about this. Or really kind of, if I hadn't heard about it on the radio, I wouldn't have known about it, right?
Yeah, and it's an interesting one too. Is I remember when I was trying to push for the publications I was working for in the late '90s and early 2000s to start covering gaming, and they were like, why would we do that? And I was like, because the video game industry is already making more money each year than the music business and the film and television industry combined. And they were like, that can't be true. And I literally got my first piece writing about that stuff because I actually dug up all the numbers and was like, you see, it's good that we're getting to a point where these people have the leverage to be able to do this and realize that these are performers. These are people who have, a lot of experience and talent and everything else. And I'm glad that they're unified and trying to fight for what they deserve. But you're exactly like what we have this year, where we're going to have a bit of, like, 2024 has been a little light on some of the content because everything got delayed because of the strikes for last year. I think we're going to be seeing a few games get knocked back on the schedule because of this thing too. And, some things are worth fighting for. So I admire them for having the fortitude. But yeah, it's messy when they come to these kinds of things. It was interesting what you mentioned, Tim, though. We were talking about how artists like, Bruce Springsteen and Neil Young and all these people are selling their catalogs of their publishing so that they can, have the money in their lifetime and use it for whatever they want. One of the things that happened last year was James Earl Jones sold his voice rights.
Yeah.
So that they can make exactly what you're talking about. They can use AI to basically take everything he said from movies and turn it into a pretty good synthesized animated Darth Vader. And
well, that was the question too that she raised, the point of, if you can you can sort of record your voice to be used in this way, but it's the thing is getting the royalties for the use of it.
That's exactly it. Like now think about the content that is out there in the world that you've signed away without realizing it. All the waivers you've signed to be on social media, all the waivers you've signed to put your stuff up on YouTube and places like that. Like, it's so easy to sample people's voices and turn them into things. I mean, ask the people who are getting these spam phone calls saying your grandchild's in jail or whatever. But, you know, it's
voiced by your grandchild. Yeah.
Yeah, voiced by your grandchild. Like, that's it's going to get really interesting. Like, this is a really interesting fight. I've got to be honest, I'm really curious to see what they settle on for this stuff, because this could be really kind of groundbreaking.
Yeah. Anyway, over to Jaime for some news about Jurassic World.
Yeah, I thought we were done. I thought the Jurassic World trilogy was
just
done.
When you thought you were done?
I'm going to talk about aliens later, just so you know, yeah.
Like that one's, it's nuts. Apparently, Jurassic World Rebirth is coming to theaters in 2025, according to this vertical from The Verge. They have in the show notes for those of you transporting it home. And it's got some folks. It's got Scarlett Johansson, Jonathan Bailey, Mahershala Ali. Like, what's happening here? How did this one just like sneak out? Did y'all hear any rumors about this? I felt like this one caught me off guard.
They announced, I think, maybe a month ago that they had cast Scarlett Johansson in an upcoming Jurassic project, but I don't think they announced that it was going to be like an extension of the Jurassic World particularly. I don't know if we talked about it on the pod when they were out, but man, that was like depreciating returns on that trilogy, as it was for the first trilogy. The first movie in the original trilogy was great, and then it declined with each subsequent movie. It was the exact same thing with Jurassic World. It was like, oh, cool concept for the second one. Oh, they're just kicking a dead horse. Cool. So I can't say I'm excited at all about a seventh installment of this franchise.
But in Star Wars news, yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting concept, but, you know, I mean, it becomes ridiculous after a while. Like, you know, like they might as well just put the dinosaurs in rubber suits, right, and have them run around and blow fire and stuff, you know.
I mean, I think that's why I think the original first one, Jurassic Park and Jurassic World, are probably two of the best, because we got it was the Raptors versus the T-Rex in the first one, and then it was like the two like mega mutated, you know, creatures in the first Jurassic World.
I thought it was about the people. I always thought it was about the people.
Oh, totally, yeah, very much. yeah. That poor lawyer who got eaten in the first one, right?
Oh, I didn't care about him. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It is kind of the Godzilla complex, though, isn't it? It is kind of like, what else can you do with this thing?
You could put them in a box and send them to alternate universes.
Cool. All right. Well, a couple of those worlds we saw in Dark Matter could use a T-Rex.
I'm sure that some of them have them. Yeah. Get them some rings.
There you go. If only somebody owned all these properties and could put them all together, Disney.
You're up again, Jaime.
Yeah, I didn't know how to approach this one, so I'll go with the first, just the facts, that there is a teaser out there, an official teaser for the Minecraft movie called A Minecraft Movie. The internet did not take this well, folks. It is a live action version, so very similar. You know, if you're pitching this in a pitch meeting to, you know, execs, it's like, we want to do it like Sonic the Hedgehog. That was such a success. It's like, cool.
Well, I was going to say Sonic, like the first version, right? That they had to redo.
And superficial. And to be really clear, like I'm observing from the outside, because I wasn't a Minecraft person. Certainly aware of it. It's such a juggernaut. I've played it before, but I never really got into that culture. So this didn't resonate with me of like how offensive it is to have Jack Black as Steve.
Yes.
How the design of the live action versions of what's basically just big old Lego brick, you know, cubes.
Voxels, yeah.
Voxels, yeah. People are like really hurt. So far, there are some contingent of folks, and I don't know if this is, you know, representative or if this is kind of the more like conspiracy minded folks. There are some folks who said, hey, remember how Ugly Sonic was a thing, and some people believe Ugly Sonic was an intentional move, a pre-planned move. I'm not a Sonic truther myself, but I recognize that they are out there. There are Minecraft truthers who are like, no, this is clearly just for getting the fans all riled up, and then you say apologize. Oh, we're gonna delay it by 3 to 6 months, and this is gonna be awesome, just like Sonic. I don't see that happening. I think this is what it is, and is going to come out in North America on April 4th. Yeah. There's some folks who are very upset about this, and they're processing it different ways.
I keep throwing back to the Lego movie. We heard they were making a Lego movie. We all thought, that's dumb. We're going to make a Barbie movie. We're like, well, that's dumb. I'll admit this trailer looks kind of weird and not for me. I'm not a Minecraft fan, although my daughter's a huge fan, so I don't know. I'd be curious to see what she thinks of this, but I don't know. You never know how these things are going to perform. This is a beloved thing, and some people may be like, how dare you? And some people might be like, hooray, they finally did the thing.
Yeah,
I'm just going to say, not for me. But what is for me is the new Alien TV show, which got maybe the lamest teaser trailer. I mean, it's a great teaser trailer, but it's 12 seconds long. This week we got the first teaser trailer for Alien Earth, which is the upcoming FX Alien show. I'm glad this is not a Disney Plus project. I'm glad this is an FX project. It does seem like they're on brand, and there's a lot to like there. It's by the guy who did Fargo and Legion, Noah Hawley, and it's executive produced by Ridley Scott. It's a prequel. It's set 30 years before the first Alien movie. And I'm looking forward to it. But when I saw there was a trailer, I was like, oh, cool, the first trailer. And it's literally a 12-second teaser where you just see a xenomorph with like Earth reflecting in its forehead. Again, creepy.
It teases.
Creepy, but ultimately a little unsatisfying. So I'm waiting for the actual trailer for this one. But Noah Hawley doing Alien for TV and actually getting to spend some time with it as opposed to doing like we talked about Alien. It's right in that same list. The latest Alien movie kind of tanked that came out in August.
Did it? Okay.
And I'm not surprised. Alien Romulus.
I don't know. I've heard some people say they really liked Romulus.
I heard it was Alien again. So,
well, yeah. I mean, it's like Force Awakens, right? They have to retell it for the new kids, right?
Yes, but then what I want to see is what they're doing here. I want them to tell me something different, and I think like an 8 or 10 episode series where you could actually spend some time with it, as opposed to just being like, oh, we got to get to the pew pew pews and we got to have them all getting chased by the aliens and stuff. Like, I like that this could take its time. I think that is the best answer to the alien duplication problem.
But it's also like Prometheus and the one that came after Prometheus, right? The Ridley Scott redos that were prequels to Alien, right?
Yeah.
But I'm going to bring these. I got a lot of stuff in my watch list, so I'm just going to bring them out now, right? Because I started watching Alien because I was thinking about maybe going to see Romulus. So I went back and Alien turned up on the Disney show because there was like nothing to watch for the last couple of weeks, right? While we were away. So I ended up watching Alien, which it's probably like the 10th time I've seen Alien. I've seen an IMAX cut of it, which was really good. But so I watched, and of course I watched it on the Vision Pro, and then got that one out of the way. I hadn't seen Aliens in a while. I'm not a huge Aliens fan, but I went back to watch it because just to follow on and sort of see where the story goes and get James Cameron's view of it, kind of thing, right? And because it was right in the middle of the Terminator stuff, if I'm not mistaken, right? And so that was an interesting story. And then, of course, Aliens Cubed, which was a very strange version of it. So, and, in terms of like talking about prequels and how they hold up, I mean, of course, the Alien movie is a classic and can't be touched. The ones that follow afterwards are derivative of that first one, but they actually are compelling enough to a certain extent in terms of like the story and the company and all that kind of stuff, right? And then I watched Alien Resurrection and oh my God, I need my brain cleaned out. because that was an alien too far, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting movie, you know, lots of good actors in it, lots of good pew pew, but it didn't advance the story, you know. And I mean, it was just another alien movie, really.
Well, and think about think about the challenge that Alien 4 faced. The first movie was made by Ridley Scott.
Yep.
An auteur and a genius. The second one was made by James Cameron, an auteur and a genius. The third one was made by David Fincher, an auteur and a genius. Can you name the director of the fourth one? Anyone?
Yes, some guy.
Jean-Pierre Jeunet. Like, nobody. Nobody. He had no chance. Like, that is...
And it was his first time, right? Or something like that, right?
Like, that's just, like, come on. Like, he has... The only other movie that he's done that you've heard of is Amélie. And I've never seen Amélie.
I love Amélie. Amélie is one of my favorite movies.
And actually, to be fair, he did The City of Lost Children, which is actually a pretty decent movie, but he was just co-director on that. But
I recommend you go back and watch Amélie.
I'm just saying, it's no wonder that Resurrection did not hold up. Like, that was an unsustainable path.
Mm-hmm. No, I know. It's what I'm saying. Like, you know, 1, 2, and 3, or 1, 2, and cubed, it took me a while to figure out how to do the cubed character on the notes here. But I mean, it's not a bad movie. Like I'm saying, like I would watch it again, you know. And I like the Prometheus movies, and I kind of like the one that came after Prometheus, although it's kind of, again, it's derivative, right? The rehash of the David android, right? Mm-hmm. Which was a great character, but that was dumb. It was like bringing back Ripley as a clone of herself. Spoilers for those of you who haven't seen it yet. Was an interesting concept, and I like the Winona Ryder surprise that she's the android. I always like the android twists in this. I thought that, you know, the android from the second movie, played by what's his name, Lance Henriksen. I thought he was in sort of all in every movie. I think he played an executive in the third one, right?
Yeah, he came back at the end of the third one as he was like the real human version of him, right?
Yeah. But I mean, because I like that. I didn't like the first movie is so good that Ian Holm as the droid is just so dislikable, you know.
Yeah.
That it's a great role. I mean, again, like you said, it's a Ridley Scott vehicle, right? So
yeah. But
it was just on the list of stuff I watched, and it was really good. So I mean, yeah, the Alien TV show sounds pretty good. I think AVP, the one where it takes place in the Antarctic.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one of the better of all of these movies as well. Like, that's a good one, right?
Because at least it was something else, right? It didn't follow that same kind of warrant. Like, I think they escalated it nicely from 1. It's like 1 alien, 2, lots of aliens, 3. What if our heroes got like, okay, so you're taking me somewhere, and by 4, they're like, what if it was a clone of this noble sacrifice? Like, nope, I'm out. So yeah, I think they just didn't have a good enough idea, and I think there's a good lesson in there about Hollywood maybe waiting till you have a good idea to make a movie as opposed to just making a movie.
Cool.
All right, last thing in our headlines here. This one's fun. Did you guys follow this story? So George R.R. Martin laced into his things he did not like about the adaptation of House of the Dragon, and he wrote a very long blog post on his Not a Blog, basically saying, like, I disagree with these different parts they changed, and here's how it, fundamentally changes what I was doing with the story. And I don't recommend you actually read the blog post. I would say read an aggregation. If you read the blog post, you will be spoiled, because he spoils stuff that happens in season 3 that's in the book. So there's your fair warning. If you want to see him go off, it's kind of fun, but he's also, I'm told he deleted it as well. So I think it's gone now. I think so. You can find it on archives, but he just kind of was complaining about, and we'll just have a couple of spoilers for season 2 here. So if you haven't seen season 2, skip ahead a couple minutes. He was talking about how he really hated the changes to the blood and cheese scenes from episode 1 of season 2. He thought, because they took away in the books, Aegon and Helena have 3 children. They have the twins, and then they have a 2-year-old named Maelor. They cut that character out. for probably logical reasons. It's cumbersome to have another child. And as we talked about when we talked about the episode in last season of our podcast, it's really, really harrowing. It's a Sophie's Choice moment in the books where Blood and Cheese show up, and not only do they kill this child, but they basically psychologically torture Helena. They basically make her choose which one of the 3 children she will sacrifice. Because they say they're gonna kill one of the kids, and she chooses Maelor, the youngest, because he's the youngest and he won't remember, and obviously that would also protect the heir to the throne. And then Blood and Cheese, to spite her and to sort of twist the knife on her, they go ahead and kill Jaehaerys anyways. Jaehaerys is the heir to the throne. So it's a really psychologically messed up scene. And he said, we should have totally done that. There should have been this other kid, because this kid actually plays an important part in season 3. And this should have happened like this. And he kind of goes off on how this should have been more twisted. This should have been a darker scene. And just a litany of things that he said, like, I get why, I have all these respect for all these people, but like I argued against all these changes, and now I feel like they can't do the kind of story that I want. And the funny part of this is they brought him on board on this one. Like they took such heat after the final season of Game of Thrones. They made explicitly a point of saying that George was going to be like on board. He's one of the producers of this series. He's right in it. And now he's taking shots at Ryan Condal, who's the showrunner. It's just so weird and so kind of unhinged, and like kind of speaks to like a weird, like maybe he's just still mad about the backlash against the ending of Game of Thrones. I don't know, but he just went off in this thing. And yeah, I read a few things just to sort of see what the tenor is out there, and a lot of people are just like, what's going on with George? He's kind of like biting the hand that feeds him. Like this TV show made him one of the most recognizable and famous authors on the planet. He is in the same sentence with, Stephen King, J.K. Rowling. Like, he has created something that is now global, and he's just ripping holes in it. I don't know. It's a strange thing. We've got a link in the show notes to a really nice piece from our Hollywood Reporter. They went into it. They got comments. They excerpt large chunks of it you can read. I highly recommend if you're a fan and you just want to see George go nuts. It's there, but wow, it's strange to see somebody really just kind of go after the hand that feeds them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a real problematic one, because like it comes across as petty, as like, dude, you lost the discussion in the room, mm-hmm. and you decide to come out now. It's like, what happens, and what do you personally gain out of this exactly? Mm-hmm. Because it had some blowback for him, including some folks being like, bro, shouldn't you be writing like the next book? Like, how do you have time to watch this?
That was the consensus. I was looking on Reddit to see what the response was, and people were like, don't you have better things to do?
Yeah, and it's like, you had a whole pandemic lockdown, but why didn't you finish at least one book? Mm-hmm. By then, you could have started a book completely fresh and new, thrown away whatever you had come up with so far, and just start fresh into the pandemic, and you still didn't get it done.
Yeah.
So this one didn't make a whole lot of sense. It makes him look bad. It makes HBO and the show look bad. I'm like, there was no good outcome here. Like, I have a really hard time now, in a non-spoiler way, maybe we'll find out. I'm like, I have a really hard time seeing how this needed the extra twist there. Like, so far, I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty happy with how the show did it. It was already pretty horrific to begin with.
Yeah. And I just, what I don't understand is, after all these years of working on these projects, how he can still be so precious about it. Like, again, I get that he writes his stories a certain way, but when you sign over the rights to production company or a network like HBO, you have to accept that compromises have to be made for cost, for all kinds of reasons. I just don't understand how you can be so precious about these things, to the point again where you go back and are like, screw you for making these changes. Like, dude, they made you rich and famous and again, I appreciate you have artistic integrity, but if you really had artistic integrity, you would have been like, cool, they're books, get over it. You know, it's too late to go back. You've crossed the Rubicon. There is no more integrity. You sold out. Now, you sit there and count your cash.
It's interesting. I saw somebody speaking the other day. I'm trying to remember who it was, but they were talking about the fact that it's an adaptation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you take the thing and it's now adapted. And what's interesting about it, and they were talking, the example they used was The Office. The first season of The Office, or the first couple of episodes of The Office, was Steve Carell doing Ricky Gervais's character, right? It wasn't until the person was saying that the actors then take on the story has to go where the actors take it, because the actors bring the actual individual people bring their performance into where the character goes, where Cersei goes and where her brother goes, Jamie goes, that kind of stuff. And where Steve Carell took The Office, right? It became, the character had like this, the story evolves around the people who are contributing to the character that they're playing, right? So, and that, like Game of Thrones, like the Tyrion character wasn't even supposed to be he was supposed to be really evil, right? In the books, right?
Yeah, I mean, they've certainly made changes ago. If you look at some of the side-by-side stuff that they do, where they show you like what the character looked like in the movies and what it should have looked like based on the books, like in the Battle of the Blackwater that happens at the end of, or in season 2 of Game of Thrones, Tyrion gets his nose cut off, like fully cut off. He is missing his nose from there on. In the show, they changed it to a deep scar, so they actually just had a scar put on his face because it would have been so expensive and annoying to have to like edit out Peter Dinklage's nose every time they did it, and that was perfectly fine. Like, obviously, this is TV; they don't want to show.
They did it with Walt Goggins, though, right?
Well, that's exactly what they would have had to do, right? But again, they were like, no, that will take people out of it. We don't want people being grossed out when they look at Tyrion, so we're going to keep his nose on. Like, that's a pretty major change. Like, the whole point is that he gets his nose chopped off, and then for the rest of the time, he has to like be charming and try and like ingratiate. Can you imagine if he shows up at Daenerys' court in like season 5 and he has no nose? What her reaction would be? Like, we don't know because he hasn't written that book yet. But
right.
Yeah, it's tricky. It's really tricky. Like when you sign over the rights, you sign over the rights. I don't know. I don't feel too sorry for him. I just don't.
I know. Let's talk about J.R. Tolkien.
Okay, let's do that. This was a guy who could write all male characters.
Yeah. So we're calling the main part of our show this week, where we're going to talking about Lord of the Rings: Rings of Power season 2. And we're going to just talk about the first 4 episodes that they dropped 3 in a row last week, and now we have the 4th, and we've watched 3/4 of it or something like that. I don't know. The math is too hard.
Yes, two-thirds of this podcast's hosts have watched episode 4.
But I've watched a third, though. So how does that really messes up?
Oh, see, now we're really messed up. That's true.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think we're 11 twelfths. Yes.
So how do we want to do this?
All right. Well, let's just start with season 2, episode 1, and we'll go through episode by episode because that's probably the best.
Okay.
Cool. All right. Season 2, episode 1, Elven Kings Under the Sky. So they kind of took this approach of focusing the first 3 episodes on the 3 different sort of tribes of beings in Middle Earth, right? The first episode was the elves, second episode was the dwarves, and the third one was men. So, Elven Kings Under the Sky. Elevator pitches?
I get it now that you've explained it. That's my elevator pitch.
Probably not.
Why did they drop all 3, right? Why did they drop 3 episodes, right? Like,
well, I mean, it's good in its way because it would have been very disjointed. And actually, when we talk about episode 4 felt a little disjointed because they were trying to keep up with everybody. That's what I think they were trying to do with the first 3, is just kind of catch you up with each group. By the time you get to episode 4, they kind of start dipping all over the place, and you're like, okay, this is a lot.
What's your elevator pitch?
Mine was a Dark Lord always keeps his promises.
Mine requires the fact that in the first season, we kept calling Mordor as Before Door.
Before Door, yeah.
So I put, you've already had Before Door, but what about second Before Door?
Yeah.
Like second breakfast.
That's it.
Right.
Did you have one, Tim?
I guess, yeah. Tim, what did you have?
For what?
Elevator
pitch.
I get it now that you've explained it.
Okay. There we go.
There you go. That was so subtle it went over my head too.
Yeah.
So the episode starts with this flashback that kind of gets us to where we met Halbrand in season 1, who we later find out is Sauron. But did you notice who was playing the original version of Sauron there, Tim, in the beginning of episode 1? It wasn't the same actor. It wasn't...
Yeah, that was very confusing.
Yeah, it was a different face because the idea is that when he... so obviously as that scene plays out, he is basically killed, for lack of a better term, by the...
Yeah, it's River Phoenix, right? River Cartwright.
It's River Cartwright. It's Jack Loudon from Slow Horses. But it's such a weird moment because you're like, wait a minute, that's not the guy we recognize. But then they show that he gets betrayed by Adar and the orcs, and then he turns into a pile of worms, and then he kills a couple people, and then he takes this new form, which turns out to be the character that we know him from the first season as Halbrand. And then we see his journey as he ends up basically in that moment where he's out at sea and encounters Galadriel, and we pick it up from there. So
that was confusing because I did have to go into IMDb and go, what am I missing here?
Yeah.
Because I'm like, again, that's when I figured out it was, Jack Loudon?
Yes, Jack Loudon and Charlie Vickers is who usually
I kept
plays
looking
him,
at him going, recognize that guy. And then, but they kept calling him Sauron, and I'm like, what happened to the other guy? And then, because I remember you had said one of the actors changed between seasons, but it's
Adar.
Sorry?
Adar, the guy who played Adar
changed, the head of the orky guys. But he's an elf, right?
He's a dark elf.
Corrupted elf?
Yeah, he's a dark elf.
Yeah. That actor changed. So first we have the actor change, which I knew about, but I didn't really make the connection to who it was. Mm-hmm. And then I got this different Sauron dude. I'm like,
what's happening?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I get it now that you explained it.
Okay, well, I'm glad I could be here for you. So then we cut to more elfy goodness, right? We got back in Lindon. They have to say it. Can't say Linden. You have to say Lindon because they keep saying Lindon.
And they also say Mordor.
They roll the R's. Galadriel, Elrond.
Yeah. And we end up with this sort of scene where they're like, hey, we got these rings here, and then it becomes a whole like, well, is the ring the thing? And Elrond makes off with the rings. He doesn't want them to have them, takes them to the smartest guy he knows, and the guy goes, hey, what if we gave them right back? Which is like interesting twist. And then we sort of focus on that. The only other thing we kind of get in this episode outside of the elves is we reconnect with our beloved stranger and the Harfoots. So we get Nori, and we get a surprise. We get Poppy back, which is kind of fun.
Yeah. So speaking of checklist, though, there are going to be 11 rings, right?
Well, no, it's gonna be more than that. So there's there's 3 for the elves, there's 8 for the dwarves, and there's 9 for men plus the 1 ring. So
wait, is that right? I thought there were 20 rings total, including the 1 ring in the poem.
So it's 3 for the. Look it up.
9 men doomed to die, 7 dwarves.
It's 7 for the dwarves. I thought it was 8. There you go.
And then 3 elven kings. Yeah.
So it's 9 for the men, 7 for the dwarves, 3 for the 3 for the elves, and then 1 ring to bind them. Yeah.
And in the darkness bind
That's
them.
the one. So, I mean, the good news out of this episode is that they end up with rings on the hands of Círdan ends up with 1, Gil-galad, the king, ends up with the other, and then Galadriel ends up with 1 as well. And they lay their hands upon the tree, and this blight that has been affecting them is magically cured. So they work. That's good news. Mm-hmm. But we also get that there is, something dark going on inside them. And that's what obviously drives Elrond in this episode, right? He's like, these are bad news, guys. And they're like, no, it's fine.
Yeah.
And then we wrap up with basically returning to Celebrimbor, who is like, I'm not supposed to see Sauron, but there he is. For my pew 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 for this one, I thought the best of that was, because it wasn't a huge pew 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 episode, I thought the Regicide was pretty good, where they all kind of pulled the Julius Caesar on Sauron. I love that they just keep stabbing him and stabbing him and stabbing him some more.
Well, it works, right? So
I mean, yeah, and then he's still not dead. So yeah, that's a pretty poor party trick. Anybody have anything different on the pew pew pew?
Kind of a different take, but the Arctic blast to freeze Mount Doom when Sauron dies.
That was cool. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because obviously that ties back to the beginning of the first episode from season 1, where Galadriel is leading that party to go find out if Sauron's alive, and they find it frozen, right?
Yep.
For quotes, a couple good ones. Strange how that which is left behind can be the heaviest burden to carry. That was very poetic from the stranger.
Mm-hmm.
I swear to you, High King, I will not stop until he is destroyed, and I have put this right. From Galadriel. Very, very definitive. And then from Sauron, when he is trying to pretend that he is Halbrand, who is trying to get out from under being imprisoned by the orcs, and Adar says, I vow to serve the Lord of Mordor to the end of my days and his. I thought that was beautifully done, because obviously he explicitly did not say, I swear to serve Adar, I swear to serve the Lord of Mordor, which is me.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty good. And my big question for this one was, in which order are they going to dole out the rings? Because here we weren't really clear if they've given the 3 rings to the elves. I wasn't sure if it was supposed to be like elves, dwarves, men, like the poem, or if it was in any particular order. So that was my question after watching the first episode was, obviously, if Sauron has shown up and is knocking on Celebrimbor's door, then he clearly wants to make more rings. So who gets the rings next? And we get the answer. We move on to episode 2.
Well, quick ones for me. My quote was Gil-galad to Elrond when he's asking him to, like, bro, give me the rings. And the quote I wrote down as close to the code was like, that decision is far above your privilege, one you endanger with each refusal. I thought it was kind of a cool way to be very kingly and smack him down, be like, bro, don't even test me. Like, you are on the thinnest edge here.
That is elvish smack talk.
Yeah. My Easter egg hunt goes across franchises.
Yeah.
So Galadriel about Elrond to Gil-galad saying escape is not his plan. 100% has to be a tip of the cap to Darth Vader's quote about Obi-Wan.
Yeah. I got another one of those coming up. So yeah, that was a good catch. So season 2, episode 2. Where the Stars Are Strange. This episode focused on the dwarves and focused on, again, a little bit more about what's going on with the Harfoots and the Stranger. So yeah. So my elevator pitch for this one was, we're gonna need more rings.
Mine was not inspired at all for the second episode. Mine was kind of more literal. Like, I guess my stream of thoughts was like, Sauron tricks Celebrimbor into thinking that he himself is Ishtar, while Gandalf, or the Stranger if you prefer, is recognized as an actual Ishtar by the Sand Wizard.
Yeah. So this one is primarily focused on the dwarves. We see what appears to be the aftershocks of the creation of Mordor rolling up through the mountains and damaging Khazad-dûm, the capital city for the dwarves under the mountain. And it caves in all of the light. So all the reflectors are no longer useful. All the windows are closed, and so they can't grow anything. And it creates this huge holy smokes moment for the dwarves, who are all of a sudden finding themselves in the dark and in trouble.
Yeah. It was a bit more like a sitcom for me, though, with the strife between the dad and the son.
Yeah, I get that. It was a little overwrought, but again, I think we're supposed to just continually to understand, not that it's a secret at this point, but that the dwarves are very prideful, and that is sort of the thing that is going to work on them, right? So
yeah, because doesn't Elrond come and patch it up at the end there, or try to? But the father doesn't like it, or banishes him.
So it's Durin and Durin, right? It's Durin. Durin goes before Durin because they're all Durin. That's the Elrond's joke from season 1, right? You are Durin, son of Durin, who is the son of Durin.
These aren't the same Durins that are in the Hobbit, though.
Yep,
they are.
It's the same family line. So
right. Okay.
They are all Durin is like it's almost like a title. So in season 1, they explain that basically dwarves have secret names, and they only reveal those to close friends and family. And otherwise, they go by these sort of legacy names, these names that are passed down. So it's, Durin the 6th, 7th, 8th, 10th, 24th, 26th. So when King Durin dies, he'll be replaced with King Durin. And that's how it's going to go evermore. But to their friends and family, they would be known as something different.
Right.
This one, it takes an interesting twist in the desert, where we are following the stranger and Poppy and Nuri, who are looking for the stars in the sky to find, this is their mission, and they're going for this. We get our first look at the big bad in that area of the world, which was an interesting and fun twist. It was the Dark Wizard. So they haven't said who this wizard is. They just keep calling him the Dark Wizard. But it's Kieran Hines, who is like a very famous UK actor. Or actually might be Irish. I should check that. I'm going to get punched in the nose by some family members. He played Mance Rayder on Game of Thrones, the leader of the Free Folk in season 3 of Game of Thrones. So that's, if you recognize that face or his voice, that's why. But he's very he looks like something out of, like, if you asked a child to draw an evil wizard, that's what they would draw. Big bushy eyebrows, big mustache, big beard, red robes. Like he kind of looks a little stereotypy, a little like almost on the nose, too on the nose. And then, with this one, it's obviously really kind of focused on what's going on there. And then we get a little bit of the stuff at the end where Sauron is basically, standing around at the front door of Celebrimbor's city, basically saying like, oh, I have nowhere else to go. I've been beaten. I've traveled a long way to be here, and they don't love you the way I love you. And he talks his way in, and then he pretends to turn into Anatar, the Lord of Gifts. And he is going to, be this, person who inspires Celebrimbor to make even more beautiful, special things. Meanwhile, we get the whole stuff going on back in Lindon, where we end up with the plan to go and see what's going on there. And meanwhile, Celebrimbor summons the dwarves, right? That was the sort of the knot on the end of that story is, hey, do you guys want some cool rings? So that was the answer to my question from before.
Yeah, it made me wonder. So because of where kind of things are going here, not specific to the episode, but it made me wonder for this series. And it is named Rings of Power, so maybe I've answered my own question. But I'm like, are we going to see all the rings created, even the One Ring? Like where are they going? Like, is that we've seen 3 of them. We've already seen the talk of creating more.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not quite as familiar with the lore, other than kind of knowing ahead of time that Sauron takes a beautiful form and pretends to be something else to do this. So it kind of tracked with what happened here in this episode.
I feel like as they're going through this, I think the best ending I can envision for this is Sauron at the end, somewhat, chastened or defeated, and it's in his own way, but then turning around and being like, hey, wait, I'm going to start forging this ring. And we sort of get the first sort of strike of the hammer of him making the One Ring, because we don't need to get back into all that, right? Like, especially after, the Hobbit movies and everything else, I don't think we need to go past the forging of the One Ring, because that's all been told. I think this kind of has to wrap up with, and then he started making the One Ring, and that's where the rest of it picks up, right? Which, in theory, if last season we got the Elven rings, this season we get the Dwarf rings, season 3 we get the rings for men, and then it wraps up a conflict. I'm thinking 3-4 seasons tops that we get out of this. At the cost of it, I can't imagine they're going to do more. Say what you will about this series, and I am enjoying it for the most part, but damn, it looks expensive.
Yeah, people have asked me about that. I'm like, look, I don't always agree with some of the design choices that they've made, but it's more of like, how did you partition or apportion your money? Like, they definitely spent a lot of money. Whether they spent it in the right places is a different question, or whether I agree with some of the visual design. I don't think this is a cheap show. This is a big money show.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and we'll talk about it a little more as we go here, but between the practical effects, so the makeup on the different characters and the dwarves and the elves and the ears, and then of course the orcs are all done up, and then you get into some of the digital effects for some of these larger scenes in scope and scale, and it's just like, man, this must cost a fortune, just a fortune to make. But it's every bit the quality of what you'd expect from a theatrical movie. Like, it's very, very high execution level. For my pew 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 for this one, I had the transformation into Anatar. That was pretty over the top. The flames putting out all the flames in the forge, and then reigniting them and reborn with this crazy outfit on and stuff like that. That was pretty funny and spectacular in its way. My Easter egg, I had the Ithildin, the part where we see Celebrimbor is making the text that disappears, right? That the moonlight exposes. It only appears in moonlight. So the Ithildin is what's on the outside of the entrance to the Mines of Moria in the Lord of the Rings books movie, where the moonlight shines upon it and says, speak friend and enter. So that's a nice little subtle one. Now we know who invented Ithildin.
So wait, that guy, was that not Sauron, the ringmaker guy?
Yeah, well, Celebrimbor does that while Sauron is still waiting outside, right?
No, I mean the yeah, because it was that scene where you're talking about the forge being fired up where they're making the rings, right?
Yes, but that's in the one you're talking about is in season or episode 3, where they reignite the forge. Because in this one is the one where he's using, so they make the reference earlier that Galadriel is worried that once you've fallen prey to Sauron's will, you can be fooled much more easily, and so we see that executed by Sauron on Celebrimbor. He basically has this like magic light show where he's like, I'm turning off your incredibly hot forge, haha, and I've been reborn in your forge, and I'm this, Lord of the Ring. And he actually uses the line Lord of the Rings, which is really funny.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
Always funny when a show or movie feels the need to reference the name of the show and or movie.
You all must be on some kind of Star Trek from First Contact.
What is this? Some kind of Star War? Yeah, no, it does take you out for a moment, but I get what they were going for. Did you guys have anything different for your pew-pews or Easter eggs?
My pew-pew, I had the sandstorm. I thought was pretty well done as a magic gone awry, and it helps the heroes in terms of getting rid of the antagonists, at least for the moment. But I guess spoilers for the next episodes sets up the but now they're split up, and that's a bad thing too, because the next conflict to happen.
Yeah, exactly. And it leads to my big question for this episode, which is, do Harfoots bounce? Because they are sent flying at the end of this one, and we see them okay later on, but man, they must be durable folk.
Don't they evolve into hobbits eventually?
That's the thing, I guess. Yeah. They said what? Best quotes. Don't you see? No one can give you a name. It's yours already. It is who you are. And when you hear it spoken, you feel your heart glow. It's from The Stranger. That's a an interesting way to look at it.
Mhm.
And this was my favorite quote by far. My preference would be to avoid the path on which we would run out of water the first day and die of heat on the second. But perhaps that's just me. He gets these wonderfully dry lines in, playing off that like naivete. He's good. He's really good.
For me, I had Disa to King Durin. It's like something like, it must take such strength to carry such a heavy grudge. Just
Yeah, she
pointing
had
out
some
how
zingers.
bullheaded they are.
Yeah, she had some good zingers to both Durin and his dad in this episode. You're right. Anything else about episode 2, or can we jump on 3? All right. Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power, Season 2, Episode 3, The Eagle and the Scepter. So here we're focusing more on the men. My elevator pitch, hey, how about we just don't give any rings to men? They suck.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought the eagle was coming to redeem the blind queen.
I know. What a, like, ugh, God, they're the worst. They're worst.
The eagles? Or
No,
the
the
people?
people. Every scene.
Yeah.
Every scene in this episode, they cut to all these different groups of people, and you're just like, ugh, you guys are so dumb.
And misogynistic.
Oh, of course. Yeah. I mean, and yeah, like, just so disrespectful across the board, where they're just like, hey, you know how your queen, like, nobly fought for, oh, well, let's turn our backs on her right away. Like, oh, good stuff. This one started out really, the way they started this episode with Beric the horse, and following Beric the horse as he, like, doesn't want to get back on the ships and go back, was, you know, he's like, Numenor? No, I have a job here. And, like, they set him free and he takes off. And then, of course, he finally, like, okay, I'm willing to take a lot of things on faith, but that the horse is like, I'm not only going to find this dude, but I'm going to go into this cave and I'm going to fight some giant spider monsters to save my guy. Like, this is above and beyond for most pets, I'm going to say.
I had a take on this.
Okay.
I don't know if it's what the authors intended, the creators intended here. Remembering that this takes place in the Second Age. This is, and Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit and stuff is in the Third Age.
Yep.
So, prequel-wise, I'm like, I'm not familiar with the lore. It's clearly there's people who, like, come back, not necessarily reincarnation and, like, becoming a different, human body and person, but more like, like a venom goo that Sauron was, kind of reincarnation. Like, where I'm going with this is, like, my question here was, is Samwise the reincarnation of Beric? Because Beric does pretty much
the same
like
thing,
a save Frodo sort of thing from Spider, giant spider, like Beric does to Isildur here.
And as a strange coincidence, what as the thing that scares back Shelob the spider in the Two Towers is, or I guess is it the beginning of, I can't remember, is it the end of Two Towers or the beginning of Return of the King?
He's also in The Hobbit.
Yeah, it's true. But what they use to scare her off is actually called the Light of Elendil, right? And Elendil is Isildur's father. So, yeah, it kind of all ties together. But yes, very excellent call, Jaime. So we get Beric. Beric rescues Isildur. Cool. Then we go back to Numenor, where it's all going down. The people are the worst. Iarian, the woman who was, skulking around in the royal chambers with the king, who discovered the Palantir. She's acting really sketchy. Pharazôn, again, a little on the nose. Like, could they make him not look like a villain just because he's a villain? Like, I mean, he could be like with the big bushy beard and the red robes and the dark streaks in his, like, come on. Okay. So he's basically talking about, he's talking to Miriel, if an eagle showed up, that would be an auspicious thing. And, you should wear red like me, not white like your dad. And, the worst. We then get, like all kinds of stuff going on there. A lot of politicking, a lot of sort of just people being rotten. This conspiracy. We get the scene in the bar where they're kind of conspiring against the queen, and then Valandil, who was one of the characters we met in the first season, one of the soldiers, one of the guys in the Navy, basically stands up and is like, I hear you say one more bad thing about the queen, because I was there and she's a noble person. I'm gonna start cracking heads here. And they're like, yeah, maybe we'll keep our voices down. That was pretty funny. we go back to the scene in Celebrimbor's forge where he is talking about, he's got Durin and his wife there, and they're talking about, hey, we made these magic rings. Would you guys like some magic rings? And so he has to, asks him to take that back to his father. We end up with Isildur heading towards, the place where he thinks his father's going to be. And turns out he's not there. But good news, everyone. Theo's there. We get the return of Arondir, the black elf, who has this sort of romantic story arc for the first season, and that's out the window because the actress who played Bronwyn in the first season quit, and so they killed her off. And so we get a real downer moment there where it's like, oh, let's just show you like a 5 seconds flashback so you can see why Arondir is sad. And then we were like reminded, oh yeah, Bronwyn, she was a good character. Oh no, she's dead now, never mind. And then, yes, Theo's back. Ugh. Like, that character's the worst of the worst. He is not only a terrible character, but that kid's not a great actor. We get this new character introduced, this Estrid, who is this, turns out to be a spy, but is, traveling with them. They go to rescue Beric, and the wild men are there, and all hell breaks loose, and then something happens, which did you guys in the moment know that was going to be what it turned out to be?
What's that?
Ents.
Oh, no,
it didn't. I'm so dumb. I don't know why I was like, maybe there's like an orc troll thing going on, because trolls got a little thing. I'm like, they're pretty big. It like completely went past me until we ended up with, I guess, spoilers for episode 4. I'm like, oh, Ents. That's right.
Yeah. I in the moment I wrote down, has to be an Ent, because in that moment they all lean back and look up. I'm like, well, that seems like an Ent kind of thing. They're in a forest. There's lots of stompy noises. All right, it's probably an Ent. And then the last couple scenes, we get the coronation scene for Miriel, who's supposed to be, taking her father's place. She's supposed to be going from Queen Regent to the actual Queen. And of course, that one takes a sideways turn where they're like, oh, you're terrible. And they all betray her. Iarion comes out and is like, I got this thing. And they're like, well, we'll smash the Palantir and that'll prove that and she's like, no, I need that thing because it's the only way I can see now. And then the eagle shows up, the giant, golden eagle shows up, and instead of being like, well, clearly the eagle's here for Miriel, they're like, it must be for Pharazôn. All hail Pharazôn, you should be our guy now. I'm like, well, that's a really weird twist. And then we end up with the forging of the beginning of the forging of the dwarf rings. So, yeah. For my pew, I had Arondir's rescue when he comes in and he rescues Isildur and Estrid outside of Pelargir. He shows up and he's like spinning all over the place and he's firing arrows and he's taking out all the bad guys. I don't love that character. I don't think Arondir's a particularly compelling character, but he looked pretty cool doing that stuff.
Yeah, I'm curious though. He doesn't go pull back his arrows and after he's fired them all.
Yeah,
walks off with his quill half empty.
Yeah, maybe
does it magically fill itself, I guess.
Maybe he's bored and he likes to whittle. I don't know. But, and then for my Easter eggs, again, I jumped out on the limb and said Ents were the Easter egg that I saw there. Jaime, what'd you have for your pew-pews and the Easter eggs?
Pew-pews, because I couldn't be bothered to remember the guy's name. It was like Elf Dude Pew-pew-pew to save Isildur and Estrid. That's literally what my notes say.
You go, Elf Dude.
Elf Dude. The Easter egg hunt, I put like, the rings for the 7 dwarves, which felt like a mild Disney Snow White kind of reference there. Yeah. So my quote was the like lady who goes up to the Queen Regent and says, is this how we honor our fallen? And then she like slaps the Queen Regent of like, she lost her son.
Who's blind?
I'm like, oh man, and exactly. She's blind. Like, you knew she wasn't going to squint. You knew she wasn't going to cringe. She was going to take the full might and fury of that slap
in the face. Like,
just got wrecked. Yeah.
Or was that a test?
Yeah. Are you really blind? Yep. Turns out she's really blind.
Oh, dude, she didn't shake at all. Like, I think it's real.
Yeah. That's got to be a hard scene to act because you know you're going to get whomped, but you have to pretend you don't see it coming.
Yeah, and then she has to say, "But tell me how you really feel."
Yeah, exactly.
No, it's okay. Don't kill her.
For quotes, I had Durin the Younger. You'd sooner convince an orc to sit for a sunbath than get the two of us in a room together, talking about his father. That was pretty funny, I thought. And then, my big question for this episode was a pretty simple one. What could they possibly do to make me care about Theo? Because I think the answer is nothing.
No, that Theo needs to get thrown into the volcano.
Oh my!
And be very sad. And elf dude pew some more people in his honor. That's how I would write this guy off.
I gotta be honest. If he took Arondir with him, I'm okay with that too. They're just not great characters. That whole, honestly, the best character out of that first season arc of the Southlanders was Bronwyn, and she didn't want to come back, and they killed off her character. The other ones were not. Yeah, the actress didn't want to return for season 2, so they, instead of recasting her, they wrote this as she dies, and that gives Arondir more. I don't know what.
And it also gives Theo something else to pout about, right?
Oh my god, he's just. Ugh, I can't stand him. I couldn't stand him in season 1. I can't stand him in season 2. He's just the worst character in the show. Yeah.
Well, he was going to go to Toshra Station and get some power converters.
Well, he's not even whiny like Luke. He just has this sad little hair lip, and he pouts. I'm like, oh, geez, yikes. All right. Anything else we want to cover for episode 3? All right, we're gonna get into episode 4. Tim has just
I don't care.
Just got a bit into it, so we're gonna do some spoiling here. But my elevator pitch. This is season 2, episode 4. It's called Eldest. Yes, few dark beasties are ever destined to be called supper. That is a reference to something that we'll talk about as we go here. What'd you have, Jaime?
Oh. I put this as the 3 main storylines: finding Theo, the Heartfoots versus the Stoors, and the Stranger and Tom Bombadil have a meet cute.
Yeah.
Meet cute.
So I don't fully understand the etymology of this phrase, but it's a rom-com or a romantic comedy kind of thing of the meet cute moment is when the Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan bump into each other, and it's cute that they meet and they have their romance kind of thing. I don't know the etymology. I just know how to use the phrase.
One of my very favorite jokes was in the TV show iZombie, where somebody owned a butcher shop and it was called Meat Cute, MEAT.
There we go.
Yeah. So this one, we start with our elvish party that was on its way to Eregion to go and talk to Celebrimbor, and they are wandering through the woods. Very much at one point, they did one of the overhead helicopter shots of people riding horses across a mountain top. I was like, well, here we are again. This is the Peter Jackson Memorial. In honor of Peter Jackson's work here, we show you this helicopter shot of people walking across a mountain. Turns out that the bridge is out, and then they have to go through the spooky part of the woods.
Were they walking or on horses?
It looked like they were walking, but then at one point
they were moving kind of quickly, though.
But elves run, right? Because we covered that in the original ones. Elves running because they say it's 15 leagues from here, and they're like, well, we better start jogging with our swords. Okay, well, sure. We go to the desert where we are once again rejoining the Stranger. The Stranger has separated from the Harfoots, as we discussed in the episode 2. They got flown up in the air, and we didn't find out for a whole episode what happened to them. So I assume for a while they just flew up in the sky for a while, and they finally landed. The Stranger encounters a goat and follows the goat, which leads him to a place, and the place is the home of Tom Bombadil, a character that is familiar to book readers. Was not in the movie versions of any of this, but Tom Bombadil was a big character in the George R.R. Tolkien books. And Rory Kinnear, famous British actor, playing Tom Bombadil. The Harfoots, it turns out, landed. They were fine. They honestly don't have much of a scratch on them, which is pretty remarkable, all things being equal, considering at the end of that previous episode, they were in the sky. So the answer is yes, they bounce. They encounter a young halfling person named Merrimack, and he says, well, come with me and I'll introduce you around to my folks. And they leads them through this little rocky passageway, and they find themselves in a village that is made up of people who kind of look like them. Only there seems like there's more racial diversity in this village. They are introduced to the Gund. The Gund is the leader of these people, who are called the Stoor, and they are, kind of surprised to find that there's a whole band of people who are kind of like them. The Stranger ends up having a whole interaction with Tom Bombadil and pieces together, hey, I'm actually supposed to be here. I wasn't actually looking for the stars in the sky. I was supposed to come here to meet you. And Tom Bombadil reveals that, yes, he's also an Istar, and also he is the eldest, hence the title. He is the eldest of the Istar. He has been there since the beginning of essentially time, and he is there to basically show the Stranger the ropes of how to use his magic so that he can be the one to defeat the twin forces of the Dark Wizard and Sauron. We get the party of elves on their way to Region, and of course they have to take the bad path, and the bad path leads them to this really scary spot where they encounter the Graves of Kings who happen to have been turned into Barrow Wights, which are these giant, hard-to-kill creatures. Luckily, our good friend, good friends the elves have read books. They know that it's time to break out the swords of the people that were buried, because that's what can kill them. So yay for reading books. We end up with the search for Theo continuing. Erondir and Isildur are going and looking. They're trying to figure it out. They bring Estrid, who we know from the previous episode is actually sworn allegiance to Adar, but she gets busted, and so they chain her up. And then the Isildur and Erondir end up getting sucked into a swamp and get swallowed by a swamp monster. She rescues them and therefore is okay in their book. And then they end up...
it is a sitcom, I'm telling you.
It is a little bit sitcom-y at times. It really is. And they end up encountering the Ents. The Ents, it turns out, are the ones who had captured all the wild men and captured Theo. And these two Ents that are mad because when the orcs came through, they basically bulldozed everything in their path on their way to get to Region. And they are pretty ticked off about it. And so there's a whole scene there where they express their sadness for all these trees that died at the hands of the orcs. Estrid's betrothed, which she talked about in the previous episode, turns out to be alive. And so poor Isildur, who thinks he's found a love match, turns out he's not. So another sad womp womp for him. And then we get the last scene where when they've just defeated the Barrow Wights, they are our elves are in the forest, and they are discovered by the orcs. And we discover that the ring that Galadriel was wearing actually has healing powers. She saves one of her compatriots by putting her hand with the ring on his chest and pulling out an arrow, and he's fine. And then she hands the ring to Elrond and says, you get them out of here. I'll take these guys on. She goes and she has a pretty decent little fight scene where she kicks some butt on these orcs for a while. But in the end, they knock her off her horse and she is caught by Adar. And that is how we end our 4th episode. The pew pew, I had the fire scenes where at one point during the fight, Galadriel is taking on the orcs, and she like spins in midair as they're like fires an arrow through a flame so that it catches flame, and then catches the orcs in turn on fire with a flaming arrow. That was a pretty, again, very cool elvish martial arts bow work. That was very cool. I did want to also flag the giant fight scene between Arondir and the swamp monster, where when they this giant creature comes out of the swamp, and then all of a sudden you see Arondir's blade like slice through its stomach, and this thing goes and dies. And then, of course, that leads to the quote that I have here, which is, there are nameless things in the deep places of the world. This one we shall call supper. Gross. Can I just say gross? Like, gross. Really gross. That one is like on an all-time, like, there is not enough money to make me want to eat something that lives underneath the swamp and just came out of the swamp, and then you gutted it and it died in the swamp. I'm thinking maybe I'm going to pass on that for dinner, but teach their own. And then, when confronted by the orcs, this is the quote we were talking about, Jaime. The quote that Galadriel uses in this episode, she says, "Go back to the shadow," which, if you say in a deeper octave, is "Go back to the shadow," which is what our good friend Gandalf says to the Balrog in the Mines of Moria. So again, a nice callback to a very famous line from a different kind of related property. What did you have for your pew pews and your Easter eggs, my friend?
For pew pew pew, I went with fighting the mud snake.
Yeah,
I thought it was like very gross. Like, it felt like real mud and stuff. Especially, I mean, kudos for the like Skin of Evil TNG style, like sucking. I assume they put real stunt actors into this terrible mud pit as like a cheaper way to like make that effect happen. Just literally get them dirty, suck them in, and the whole thing just felt very thick and gooey. Like, the mud and everything felt like authentic to me, including the beast itself.
Yeah. And the noises, it was really good Foley work, because when they get sucked under and you see Estrid standing there and you just hear these like blip, 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 like it is the most disgusting swamp I've seen in a long time.
Yeah, but Easter egg, I put the Ents, but really Ent wives, because they've been mentioned. They were like missing for an age, I want to say, in the third age, and here we are in the second age. I'm like, yeah, that kind of makes sense. That kind of tracks. There's Ent wives because it's in the past.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good one. Mm-hmm. And she has a name. Her name is Winterbloom.
Winterbloom. It's a really good name.
It is a good name. That one. And I like that they use that's the clue that Arondir is following, right? Is that he keeps seeing these petals, and you're like, well, what's with the petals? What's with the petals? And then, of course, the payoff is that Winterbloom has, like, she's a flowering tree, and so when she whacks things, petals fly off. Yeah, really good, really good. Good quotes in this one. If everybody calls you nobody, doesn't anybody call you somebody? That's from Poppy talking to Mary Mac. That was pretty funny. Boy, if we put your brains in a vulture, it'd fly backwards.
Yeah,
from the gun. Yeah. That's a good one. That's a pretty good insult. I like that one. Mm-hmm. If these two flames combine into one, there will be no end to burning till all Middle Earth is ashes. From Tom talking about the Dark Wizard and Sauron. And then the one we mentioned before, there are nameless things in the deep places of the world. This one we shall call supper. Arondir, apparently stomach steel. He's good.
For my quote, it was when Poppy and Merrimack meet, and it's quite simply, "I'm Poppy." Like, there's like a smitten or sultry pause. Kind of is this a meet cute as well? What's happening here? Like, you just met this dude. I guess there's some chemistry there.
Yeah, and I love that that's followed up by this moment of like waiting to be invited into the conversation from Nori, and then she's like, "And I'm Nori." My big question for this episode was, and you'll appreciate this, Jaime, once they go into the swamp, how did Arondir and Isildur clean off after that? Because they are head to toe caked in muck when they come out of that. And then we see them later on, and they look like they did before. They've just got like a little bit of dirt on them. Like, they wouldn't get those clothes clean ever. They would have to burn those clothes.
Yeah, I'm
Did
not
they find
sure.
a sparkling spring somewhere outside of Pelargir?
Yeah.
In which case, it's not a sparkling spring anymore. So, strange as it sounds, at the end of this 4th episode, we are halfway through this season after 2 weeks. There were only 8 episodes, and we have now done 4. I guess.
So are we halfway through season 7 of episode of Spotcast?
Yeah, pretty much. No, that's going to go on forever, Tim. Because we know you love editing our voices. What do you guys think so far after 4 episodes? I mean, obviously they've approached it a little differently. The 4th episode is the first one where they're kind of tick-tacking around a little bit more. Yeah, what are your impressions so far? Are you feeling good about it? You liking it? Does it feel like you can't wait for the next episode, or you're like, it's fine?
I think I'm on the positive scale of this, where I think I see some improvements off of season 2. Mm-hmm. Granted, they've got some transitional stuff. They had to write off Braun and do some other things to move things around, and I guess they decided not to kill off Theo as well. Like, he's going back to his planet, kind of thing. But I think there's some definite improvements, like the setting up of the story of like, okay, cool, like I'm going to assume the stranger is Gandalf. Maybe they're going to give us a weird twist and like, oh, it's actually Saruman, or some other weird sort of thing. But I'm like, it's probably Gandalf. We're seeing a little bit of a speed running through the rings, but it is, I think, important to start setting those up and start setting the stage for, a presumed battle against Sauron, or at least getting you close enough that you feel like, oh, okay, that's what ends up happening in the Lord of the Rings series.
Yeah.
So kind of, and maybe this is, unintentionally, damning praise, given that the Halo series was canceled in season 2. I said that the Halo second season was, showed market improvement. I feel like there's improvement here as well for Rings of Power. I feel like I'm more compelled to watch than I was the first season.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel an investment in the characters? That's the thing I've been asking myself after 4 episodes. Again, I just spelled out, obviously, Theo I don't have a lot of love for.
Yeah, some of them I do.
Yeah.
Some of them I do.
That's the question, is like, my biggest investments are obviously where you would expect them to be. Like, obviously, with the elves, with the dwarves. I don't find really any of them, the human characters, very compelling. Not really any of them.
Like even the stranger, or you don't consider him human?
He's not. He's an Ishtar. He's a spirit, like a space being, right? A wizard, something that's completely different. But yeah, I do like that storyline. But I'm like, all the stuff in Pelargir, like, I get that we have to have Isildur work through this because we know what Isildur's fate is. But I could take it or leave it. And maybe we're supposed to feel poorly of them, like, the confession scene is the closest thing I felt to a feeling around the human characters, when Isildur confesses that his mother drowned saving him. I thought we need more scenes like that are gonna make me care about him and care about some of the human characters. Like, I feel bad for Miriel, the Queen Regent, who's no longer, because she lost her sight, and obviously she's a character trying to do the right thing. But yeah, I'm just not loving a lot of the stuff that's happening with the humans. There's not a really characters that I can sink my teeth into there. But I really I like the dynamic between Disa and Durin a lot. I think the Disa character is a lot of fun. I'm really glad we got female dwarves. And I think Morfydd, what's her name? The one who plays Galadriel, Morfydd Clark, I think is really good. I like her a lot. And I'm still kind of warming up a bit to the Elrond character. He is just kind of, he's kind of a little bit holier than thou, which I guess is what they're trying to go for. They're trying to sort of, he's going to learn stuff through this journey. But
yep.
Yeah, he's got some growing up to do in there too. Not that they all don't, but yeah.
Right. I think my take is, and I think it's especially true given the source material for this. So when folks ask me, like, hey, I've seen the Lord of the Rings movies, should I read the books? I'm like, well, let me ask you, how do you feel about reading something that is very biblical? Like, what do you mean? I'm like, the movie like shortcuts through some things, and the way stuff is presented in the books is very biblical in terms of like how it's laid out.
Mm-hmm.
Long journeys into like this person is, begat that person. And I feel like that applies here as well. Of like, I feel like it's almost a semi-religious experience to watch this show, not in any like hallelujah sort of way, but in more in a I don't know if this is true in Canada, but here in the United States, come Easter time, there is always the Ten Commandments with Charlton Heston as a big thing that's shown on broadcast television. And it's, it's like a 3-hour movie, which goes to like 4 hours when you include commercials for Pampers and Coca-Cola and etc. Right. But it's like an important story to hear and be told. It's a big part of the culture, but I don't really feel like Moses as presented in the story is like that compelling of a character himself, even though it's well acted by Charlton Heston's more like, I don't feel that compelled by Noah of Noah's Ark as a character. He's more like a fable, parable type character than it is like it's very plot driven of like, guess what? Moses is going to have to get discovered. Guess what? He's going to grow up with Ramses. Guess what? He's going to say, let my people go. And eventually, spoilers, there's the 10 commandments at the very end on these stone tablets. Like, it needs to get from point A to point Z, but it's not really about like, well, how does he feel and what sort of struggles? It's like, no, dude, like, you're just going to learn the journey here. Like, this is the journal of the journey. Like, that's how I feel about this. But it feels very biblical.
Isn't that the risk, Jaime, though? Like, if these are sort of, avatars in a way, they're not as fleshed out. Like, that's what we talked about as far as, like, good TV. Like, the benefit of good TV versus a movie is you get that extra time where you can explore a character's motivations and you can get to know them so that you feel that investment, so that when something happens to them or their lives are endangered or whatever it is, you feel more tension and you feel that investment. I'm worried a little bit that some of these, I mean, like, again, we know who lives and who dies here. We know sort of what the fate is of a lot of these characters. I'm worried if you don't get more time to invest with them, if they don't take the time to make you invest with them, then really it's almost like watching a video game play out or something.
There's a chance of that. And I think that's where, even though it's very clear that every streaming service wants to have the equivalent of Game of Thrones, and lucky for HBO, they got a second crack at that. I think it's very clear, and I hope we said this back when the first season came out, like, oh, this is clearly Amazon's Game of Thrones. Like, this is what they're aiming for. But you can't turn, like, the Bible into Game of Thrones, right? And they took
oh, if you could, Jaime. Oh, if you could.
I mean, people would be very shocked if he took those parts. I guess it is technically there. But I think the difference with Game of Thrones is you don't have a religious background to it. I think J.R.R. Tolkien was like very religious. I fully believe this is definitely like his Bible, the Silmarillion, the Lord of the Rings, the Hobbit, and etc. Versus Game of Thrones, which is much more like, hey, you remember War of the Roses? Here's what this thing that happened in real life. Here's my take on this real world thing that happened that was more about the people and not really about supernatural aspects. So that's looking at you execs, don't look superficially and be like, hey, they got swords and fantasy and elves and orcs and stuff. I'm like, yeah, that is superficially common. Looking at a like Dungeons and Dragons kind of approach to this, but these are very different properties.
Yeah,
one is a lot more about the political intrigue, the characters, the sex, the violence, and the other one is like should be there on Easter Sunday with the Ten Commandments and Charlton Heston. Like, you should be able to flow seamlessly from the end of that into one of these episodes and feel like, oh yeah, that's okay. Like, guess what? I guarantee you, we're not going to see some like crazy waterfall scene with Galadriel there, right? We're not going to see any of the Durins naked butts or anything, because that's not what this is. It's not Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I just view it as like a different thing is where I'm going with. And I even threw in there Dungeons and Dragons that I'm like, even that's different too. It also has swords and fantasy, and it's nothing like Game of Thrones, nothing like Lord of the Rings.
Yep. And honestly, I think that's why I'm a little bit more drawn to the Disa Durin and some of that stuff, because it's got like a little more, as strange as it sounds talking about two dwarves, but it has more humanity to it, right? This is a couple who love each other, but they see each other's flaws, and obviously there's some dynamics of family and stuff. I know, Tim, you sort of said that turned you off a little bit, but like I think I like that these are.
I don't mean it turned me off. It just seemed like something that you could just take out of a.
Yeah, it felt more like a drama,
sitcom.
Right? Yeah. But yeah, I like that there is an effort to sort of make these people more identifiable characters. It does, at times, it does feel like we are kind of dealing with, NPCs in a video game where, they're behaving a certain way because they're programmed to behave a certain way and not because people would really behave that way. Right. But that being said, I'm looking forward to seeing the rest of the season, and we will be talking about it for the next few weeks here on Spotcast.
Yeah. My one big question is like, again, because I'm not as familiar with this part of the lore, I'm like, who's this dark wizard? Mm-hmm. Does he come from the lore, or is he like wholly new or entirely new for the show?
Well, and he's got to have some juice, because again, you don't hire Kieran Hines if you're not going to use him well. And so far, he's just kind of been, growling and simmering and threatening, but you got to think you're going to see some cool stuff come out of that.
Yeah, but aren't there two wizards in? I mean, there's Sauron in Lord of the Rings. There's Sauron, and there's the White Wizard and Gandalf the Grey, who becomes a White Wizard.
Yeah, right? But there's a whole rainbow of wizards too, because there's Radagast, and there's a whole bunch of other wizards over the course of the ages too, right? So
yeah, Radagast the Brown to go along with Gandalf the Grey, who does become the White, just like Saruman the White, and two blue wizards who like go off into the east and are never heard from again.
Never heard from again. I know, that's one of the best ones.
So there's a series right there that you could play it a few different ways, right? They could go like, oh man, they were like side story Mandalorian-ish kind of spaghetti western. It could it could be kind of sitcom-y and kind of go funnier if you really wanted to. I don't know how people would feel, but it's like, hey man, like these dudes as far as we know, take no part in any of the story, but maybe they did? Question mark?
Yep. Okay, we're well over 2 hours now.
All right. Let's land this plane. We want to talk about Time Bandits. Has everybody finished Time Bandits?
I haven't, but in fact, I've not even started, but I'm okay with you all covering that, because I think there's going to be a thing we'll get to, but I'm like, when I'm like, it kind of depends.
Well, we'll try not to get too spoilery. The only spoilery thing that is worth saying for me is I wasn't sure if they were going to try and wrap this up or if they were going to try and leave the door open for more. And they left the door open for more, and I'm not sure how I feel about that.
Yeah, I mean, there's if you're using the movie itself as part of the part of where this is going, I think the movie is actually 3 acts, but this one doesn't quite even get to the third act, right? But that last piece, I was waiting for it, and I think that's where they're trying to fit that into season 2. But I was telling you guys before the show started that I listened to Lisa Kudrow on Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend this couple of days ago, yesterday actually, and it's a really interesting interview with her because she talks about her time on Friends and about being famous and all that kind of stuff. And she did do 2 or 3 other shows after Friends, obviously, and then she came back to do this one. And it's interesting that how she ended up in the role and her portrayal. She talks about. Interesting that this is also shot during COVID, right? So she sort of said they had the COVID rules on the crew and the actors and that kind of stuff, right? So it's a really interesting interview. I'll put a link to the show notes for that interview. But and she even talked about Kal-El as well.
Yeah, the young star. Yeah,
because she was sort of joking with Conan about the fact that they said, don't touch those barrels over there. And she's like, okay, well, whatever. And then they do their scene. And then she finds out that those barrels are going to blow up later.
Yeah.
They're full of, but she said those weren't the actual barrels, but they kind of like implied that they were, it was a chance to blow up.
Yeah.
But
yeah, no, I mean, I thought ultimately
I like the twist with the sister in there, though. That was an interesting sort of bit.
Yeah, right? Like I think as far as a sort of an adaptation, like I get that there's a little bit of a Taika Waititi backlash that is happening now. Some people are just kind of over him and his stuff. I am a fan. I enjoy his work. I agree that, you know, sometimes he can be a lot. I enjoyed his portrayal of the Supreme Being in this one, just as I enjoyed Jermaine Clement playing the dark, pure evil. They were a lot of fun. I liked that this series didn't take itself too seriously. I like that it was fun and glib and sarcastic and you know, just was having a good time. Jaime, for a parallel, it felt a little bit like that Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves movie. It both had some good action stuff happening, but it was also like, hey, we get that, you know, this is Chris Pine in a Rangers costume looking silly. Like it kind of had that vibe to it, and I kind of dug that. I think the thing I really enjoyed about it is, you know, in a world where we have things like Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones that take themselves quite seriously, it's kind of nice to have some, you know, playful, silly, fun moments in sci-fi and fantasy. And if they were gonna, they have. I looked today. I looked for the last few days to see if there's any word. There's no word on a season 2 renewal. They haven't said anything. I don't know how it performed. They do set the stage for a season 2. I will watch it. I would watch it if it comes back.
Well, it's fun when they play with you know, the history, right?
Yeah, and just play with your expectations, because you know, again, they go to one place where you think people are going to act a certain way, and they act completely different. And you know, the episode somewhere in the mid-season where they end up going to the Neanderthals, and the Neanderthals have been taught how to speak like chavs, like you know, lower class Britons. In it. You having a laugh? You having a laugh? Like, it's so stupid, but God, I laughed at that episode. It was so dumb and so funny. Like, you know, with like the leaders eyeballing them. You want to have a go? You want to have a go? Like, it's so dumb, but it was so funny. I like that there's a place for something like this, especially, you know, again, if you look up and down the, you know, sci-fi fantasy stuff that has come out from Disney Plus, from Apple TV Plus, you know, they're from For All Mankind to Silo to, you know, some of the stuff we were talking about, you know, earlier, talking about Dark Matter, you know, not light stuff, Severance. Like, I'm glad there's this. I'm glad this is out there. I'm glad that there's a place in the genres for this stuff. Okay, so on our last episode of the last season, Tim and I talked about the end of House of the Dragon. Unfortunately, Jaime was traveling, so I wanted to ask Jaime if you had any last impressions of how that wrapped up, the great build-up that went nowhere at the end of House of the Dragon Season 2.
Yeah, I thought it was a big letdown, not in a like, oh, I'm never going to watch this show again. It was more like, I see that you had to lop off a couple of episodes, I think from 10 down to 8.
Yep.
Feels like you kind of needed the latter to, you might as well go whole hog and lop off like 2 more, because the dragon stuff and everything was like, oh man, that's really cool. Like, maybe it's one episode prior where Aemond and Vhagar have to just like, whoa, you know, run away. We can't take on these 3 dragons. That might actually be a better ending to the season. Like, oh, holy smokes, they had to run away, and there's like 3 dragons here. Like, Rhaenyra's got like a better team now. Like, that probably feels like I see why they ended it where they did, but it doesn't feel like a real season finale. It feels like, oh, okay, we kind of drift off, and we'll maybe hit it extra hard in season 3 of like banger after banger after banger, because you move a season finale's worth of 2 episodes into the very first 2 episodes of the season. So maybe we take a little bit from here and we put it over there will happen.
Yeah. It's funny because we just talked about how there's a place for humor in fantasy and sci-fi. those scenes where they had the Master of Ships, Master of Coins, the Lannister in talking with the sellswords that he's trying to hire to come and fight their cause for them. And they go back to that scene like 3 times in that finale episode. I'm like, you could cut all this out just so I can get something actiony happening here. Even though it was super funny, and like they make him sing, and the, you know, oh, you should impregnate my wives, and all that. That was really funny. But I'm like, that's not what I'm here for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think the whole season overall is good. I just didn't like the way it ends rather abruptly.
Yeah.
I think we've gotten accustomed to having a hook of like, oh man, can't wait for the next season. This one I'm like, yeah, I can't wait for the next season, but not because of this episode. There's not like a Mr. War Fire kind of like dun 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 kind of thing. It's kind of like, well, you can't wait because you're like, well, give me more story.
Yeah. Well, I think I said it in the last episode, but you know, having read the source material, Fire and Blood, it is all Crunchberries from here on out. Like there's just like the stage is now set. There are no more pawns on the board. It is just royalty, and here we go. Like, so
unless it gets canceled,
it won't get canceled. They have already confirmed they've signed to do 2 more seasons, and it's going to wrap with season 4. That is what they're going to do. Okay. And they said that there doesn't look like they're going to go back up to 10 episodes. They're going to do 2 more 8-episode seasons, which means they're going to make them long and they're going to make them bangers. But I mean, there's only 16 episodes to go here to wrap up this whole Civil War, which is going to be a bloodbath. So I'm thinking we're going to get a lot of action in season 3. It's just a shame we have to wait 2 years to get it.
Yep.
All right. Watch list.
What you got, Jaime?
I have Rick and Morty, the anime, and this is on Cartoon Network in English, but you can watch in Japanese on Max. At least you can in the US. I didn't do Just Watch to see what happens.
Yeah, didn't we talk about this one already before? Yeah,
I think that was on the we would like to watch.
Yeah, I've started watching. There's 3 or 4 episodes since I watch it in Japanese on Max, or Japanese language English subtitles on Max. I can't see it until like midnight. So like tonight, technically Friday, I usually watch it during lunch or something. So I think the 4th episode has come out, and it's Rick and Morty, but like it's very much an anime show of like weird stuff is happening.
It is not available in Canada right now. It is on the same list as Star Trek Prodigy Season 2, which for the record is still not available in Canada unless you purchase it from the iTunes store.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I didn't look at Just Watch to see if it was available anywhere. The high seas, I suppose.
You enjoy that in your fancy America.
Time to start digging some potholes so that stuff will fall off of trucks.
Avast ye mateys. Arr, arr, arr.
All right, I got a bunch of things because obviously I've been watching a lot of stuff while we've been away. But today I went to see the Tragically Hip movie, No Dress Rehearsal. They played all 4 episodes that are going to be on Prime. It's the Toronto International Film Festival this week, and I've got a ticket for this one. I'm going to go see Saturday Night, which is the film.
Oh, I want to see that. That looks so good.
Jason Reitman by, I can probably get another ticket if you want. But, yeah, so anyway, so yeah, I just happened to get this one. And I wasn't planning on going on the first day of the festival. It just happened to be a time that made sense for me, and it worked out, and I got a ticket. Quick hits here. Only Murders in the Building, or OMITB is what they call it on the show, is back. Season 4, I think, or 3, 4. It's out there, but it's like 3 amigos take out Chevy Chase and put in, what's her name? I forget. Selena Gomez, but it's pretty good.
Yeah.
Sunny was an interesting surprise. This showed up on the Apple TV. This is Rashida Jones and Sunny is a robot that her husband makes for her as he disappears on supposedly in a plane crash. And she's in Japan, but she's married a Japanese person, which is why she's in Japan. And so it's my favorite thing is reading subtitles, as you guys know. So half of the acting is done in Japanese, and half of the and her stuff is in English. Interesting show. I'm going to say it's worth a watch. So watch it. It's only I think 8 or 10 episodes long. It's not very, and they're only half an hour. Jules was an interesting surprise. I watched that one. I've discovered that my library has movies that I can download onto an app called Hoopla. And so check that out if you have a library card. And this was another senior. It's like the one, there was a movie a couple of years ago where an old guy, trying to remember the name of the actor, who has a robot that takes care of him. This is a similar idea. It's an alien that lands in Ben Kingsley's backyard.
Oh, I've seen the trailer for this. This looks interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it's on the Toronto Library, so you might be able to get it on Mississauga Library. But and of course he's got dementia, so when he goes and tells everybody that, you know, the alien in his backyard is giving them grief, they're like, yeah, okay. But then the other seniors, that the two ladies that come along and help him with the situation, you know, it's an interesting story. I don't know why, but I watched Argyle, and Samuel Jackson's in it, and I wonder if he remembers reading the script for Long Kiss Goodnight. That's all I'm going to say. But yeah, it was pretty hard to take in some parts.
And this is tied to the Kingsman universe, right?
Yeah, I think so. And there was they dropped some Easter eggs in about that, but it's a bit Bullet Train-y at the beginning, and you know,
I like Bullet Train. I thought it was good.
Yeah, and the Bullet Train is an excellent movie, and then tries to be. It's not nowhere near as good as Bullet Train. Trust me. In fact, we had a request from Keen for Jonathan to watch Argyle and give us one of his rants.
I'll put that on my to-do list, Keen. Stay tuned.
Yeah. I stumbled across If, which is the movie with Ryan Reynolds about and
Imaginary
Steve Carell plays. Yeah, it's a kid. It's geared towards kids, but it's not bad. If is Imaginary Friends, yeah, and it's an interesting movie. It's worth a watch. And then I'm really enjoying Bad Monkey, which is I forgot his
Vince
name
Vaughn.
Now. Vince Vaughn. He's good. I mean, for me, he's hit and miss on some roles. I can't wait for it to be on. In fact, it's one of the first things I watch when it comes on. And of course, I watched the show that Jonathan's going to talk about in a minute, but because I watched as soon as that one. That's the one show that as soon as it's available, I watch.
Yeah, and that's Slow Horses, which is I 100% give Tim credit on that one. He called that one ages ago, and I caught up with that over the summer and loved the first 3 seasons. It's such a brilliant show. It's so very funny and also really compelling action, and just it's just tremendous. It's tremendous across the board. First episode of season 4 dropped this week. They're doing one a week for 6 episodes, as they always do. And yeah, this one starts with a bang, but also like it's funny because for a show that is not afraid to like kill its babies, I still found this one a bit far-fetched. I did not fall for the ruse that they were trying in the first episode. But
you didn't?
No, not for a second. Although,
yeah, I kind of wondered about too.
But I could see why it would be easy to consider.
So, are we supposed to see this from the point of view of the grandfather? Like, is that like he's imagining that's what's happening, and then because I found it really weird that.
Yeah, I think we're supposed to. So without getting too spoilery, his River's grandfather shoot somebody, and then for the episode you're supposed to think it might have been River, and it definitely.
Well, that's a spoiler.
Yeah, I mean, come on,
because the end scene is kind of like what?
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting the end scene,
but yeah, it's yes.
Because now I'm wondering how did that situation transpire, and what are they trying to cover here? You know?
Yes, and that's so in typical form. I figured that it's hard to tell because when somebody dies tragically, Jackson Lamb is like disgusting and irreverent, and when somebody like does something heroic, he is disgusting and irreverent. So it's impossible to tell whether he's actually like would he be really upset if River or Louisa.
But he does have a moment there in the car, right?
Yeah, but I think in that moment in the car, he's supposed to be like trying to figure out, okay, where would they go from here? Not like
right. Yeah. Yeah, and it's Spook. That's actually based on the book Spook Street, which is Yeah, I did actually. After we talked with, I think it was I'm trying to remember Nigel. I think on our Slack channel, I did actually go and download one of the first audiobook and listen to it.
Oh yeah, how was it?
And it was good. I mean, there was a bit more exposition on the characters, but it was like note for note the show.
Oh.
Excuse me. Yeah, I mean, there's a bit more. Like again, like I sort of said, that bit about the adaptation part in that the that's what it was. It was like that writer was the one who was talking about the one I started following on Threads, who was talking about the JK or not the George R.R. Martin rant, right? But like the lady who wants to be first desk,
Yes,
famous actress. I can't remember her name now, but she owns that character, and that does not come across in the book. Right.
Yeah.
Jackson Lamb is a bit. You really don't get. You need Gary Oldman to really flesh out that character, because even in the book, it's not. You're like, who's this disgusting guy, right?
Yeah.
Like in the trailer, I'm no spoilers here, but my favorite line in the trailer is when they're walking up the stairs to find this dead body and he goes, and she says, "Aren't they the rejects?" And he says, "They don't like to be called the rejects." And she says to him, "What do you call them?" "The rejects."
The rejects. Yeah. Yeah.
They're my rejects.
That's
right.
Yeah.
That's the point of Jackson Lamb.
I can't they're doing something special with this show, and it's hard to put your finger on. I mean, obviously, it's a killer cast. Kristen Scott Thomas is who you were referencing, from The English Patient, and she's a kind of famous British actress. She's wonderful, and you're right, she kills that part. And Gary Oldman, man, like this is a part he was born to play. He is incredible in this, but the ensemble is really good too. Yeah,
I care about every character. That's the thing, right?
Yeah, and everybody, like, again, it's perfect because everybody is flawed, and going in that everybody's flawed. Like in this first episode back, they introduce a new character who's stuck at Slough House. He spends the whole episode ignoring everybody, wearing a hoodie pulled up over his head and not doing anything until he accidentally catches a stray stapler and it just screams an expletive, and that's all he does in the entire episode. It's just so weird and funny, and like it's just so interesting. I feel ashamed that I didn't watch it sooner, but I'm all on board now. So get into that.
When they brought James Callis back in as first desk.
Oh my god, James Callis obviously hits our world. He was Balthazar on the Battlestar Galactica remake. Again, a well-known. His ability, just like it was in Galactica, to play somebody who is so handsome and yet so dumb. He plays it so well. He's great at it. Some of those scenes where just with his body language and stuff, he's just looks so uncomfortable. Oh, he's so good. Yeah. He's so good. Yeah. I was so happy to see him.
And the line where he's got to do the press conference, and he's like, he asks her what to say, right?
Maybe you should say.
And then he says, "Well, why don't you go and do it for me, right? And report back to me."
Yeah.
Like such an upper manager.
Well,
right?
And especially because like the whole of season 3 was around her wanting that role so desperately, and she come back and she doesn't have it, and you're just like, oh man, it's such a great show.
I love the play between her and Jackson Lamb.
Any scene with the two of them is just like that. Is I would watch them recite the phone book. They're so talented.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I thought the parts in this one with Jackson meeting the new head of the dogs was very funny too. He's just wrapping her around his finger as she's underestimated.
And she suggests go back to bed, and she says, and have a shower. And he says, I think that's
inappropriate for our first meeting, don't you? Yeah, so good.
He's so fast.
That's it.
I guess that's it for another episode of Spotcast. So, Jonathan, people can get in touch with you. Where do they find you?
You can find me on the X or the Twitter, or you can find me on Instagram. I'm at JPK News, or you can find me on YouTube at youtube.com/@JPK. All
right. And Jaime, where can people find you?
I'm on Twitter as @DevWithTheHair.
All right. Well, my name is Tim Mitra, TIMMITRA on Threads and Mastodon. And I'm boycotting the other aforementioned site because I disagree with the politics of the owner.
Well, well done for you.
I'm doing the Jaime thing. I'm voting with $1, which, as I've told him 1,000 times before, means nothing.
That's because it's half of a US dollar. That's very challenging for you to vote with your dollars.
Stop voting with those Canadian dollars.
3/4 of a US dollar. Yeah. Anyway, so until next time, we'll see you in the future.
Bye.
Bye.
You've been listening to the Spotcast podcast. If you want to find out more about the podcast or see the episode show notes, visit the Spotcast website at spotcast.com. You can get in touch with us on the website or follow us on Twitter at Spotcast. If you have feedback or questions, send us a tweet with the hashtag AskSpotcast. If you like the show, please consider recommending us to a friend, writing a review on iTunes, or pledging any amount at patreon.com/Spotcast. You can find details on how to help us on our website, spotcast.com/sponsor us. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the future.
That was fun. I missed you guys.
Yeah.
Nowhere I'd rather be on a Thursday night.
Yeah. My day started at like 9:30 this morning, and I've been on my feet all day. So I barely had time to watch the first 20 minutes of that show.
Yeah, I had to go into my office today, so I've been up since 5:45, which for those scoring at home means about 19 hours ago. So yeah, I'm ready for that. All
right, let's call it then. Or do you want to talk about these other shows?
No, I just put those in. I just pulled them up so we'd have a reminder of what's coming up for us. So for the next couple of weeks, or for next week, it's just episode 5 of Lord of the Rings, and then whatever else we want to get into. And then after that, we can decide if we want to do more or shorter or anything else with, because Agatha's coming.
Is Tomb Raider animated? Do we know?
I think it is.
Okay.
Jaime, did you watch the Terminator series that just dropped on Netflix? Terminator Zero?
I've been watching, I've been sort of splitting between that, and I guess this is future watch list stuff.
Yeah.
I've been watching a few episodes of Terminator, and then sort of threading that with, or interleaving that with Cobra Kai, and that's that 90s show.
Oh, yeah, I'm going to get back into that, too. I like that show. It's funny.
Yeah.
I'm going to stop recording because I got to go find...
All right.
No,
we'll call it.
Yeah, we'll call it there.
All right. See you next week, guys.
Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.